No one was prepared for the silence that followed, not his friends, not his co-stars, not even his family. The sudden and tragic death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner sent shockwaves through the world. A man once known for his calm strength and undeniable presence on screen was gone in an instant. But now, after days of overwhelming grief and unanswered questions, his wife and children have stepped forward, not with anger, but with a raw and emotional statement that has left the world in stunned silence. Their words weren't rehearsed. They were real, painful, honest, and they've cracked open a deeper truth behind the heartbreak. This wasn't just a loss, it was a fracture in a legacy millions grew up with. The family's emotional message is pulling back the curtain on Malcolm's final days, giving us a glimpse into the private pain he carried and the moments they never thought would be their last. The media is scrambling to keep up, fans are still reeling, and new questions are rising from the ashes of his sudden passing. In this video, we're uncovering the family's full statement, the heartbreaking details they chose to share, and the powerful legacy Malcolm leaves behind. What they revealed will move you, and what they didn't say might haunt you. What they revealed about his final moments was not just heartbreaking, it was soul-shattering. As the world grappled with the sudden loss of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the beloved star who brought warmth and wisdom to living rooms for generations, the silence from those closest to him was deafening. His wife and children, wrapped in unbearable grief, said nothing until now. Their long-awaited statement has torn through the internet, exposing the depth of their pain, the confusion they faced, and the intimate, devastating truth about Malcolm's final hours, a truth no one was prepared to hear. In this video, we take you beyond the headlines and into the heart of the Warner family's tragedy. From the chilling silence that followed the initial reports to the emotional bombshells revealed in their public message, we're unpacking every detail that mainstream media refused to touch. You'll hear the whispers of what really happened behind closed doors, the private battles Malcolm may have been facing, and the confession his wife made in her final line that left even longtime fans in tears. This isn't just a story about loss, it's about legacy, love, and the emotional weight of saying goodbye too soon. Hold on tight, for what follows will show you a side of Malcolm-Jamal Warner that has never been seen before. And we assure you that this is just the start. Whispers, cryptic tweets, ambiguous news headlines, and bewildered followers attempting to piece together the unimaginable were the beginning of it all. What became of the family of Malcolm-Jamal Warner? Why were the sources so silent? And above all, who was impacted? The catastrophe struck like a freight train, according to those involved. Nobody anticipated it. According to sources, Warner's home, which is often regarded as private and serene, was thrown into disarray following a tragic personal loss. Although information was initially kept confidential out of deference, reports gradually started to surface and presented a devastating picture. According to reports, a close family member passed away suddenly and unexpectedly during the incident. According to some, it might have been a cousin or sibling who acted as a brother figure to him. Some conjectured that it was a terrible mishap involving a member of his close family. Warner has not made all the details public, but we do know that it had a significant emotional impact, with his wife and kids being the ones most affected. His wife broke up with him initially, according to family sources. In the days after the incident, friends said she was inconsolable and described her as a pillar of strength, as well as the kids. They asked questions all the time that no parent ever wanted to answer, and they were disoriented and reclusive. The timing of the event was what made it even more terrible. After finishing a number of well-known projects, Malcolm-Jamal Warner appeared to finally have some time to spend with his family. That optimism was short-lived. This is where it becomes even more tragic, though. According to reports, his wife had a hunch that something negative was about to occur. "Hug your loved ones tighter. We never know when our last goodbye will come," she said in a mysterious post on her private Instagram. A week prior to the tragedy, it appeared to be a general reflection at the time. Now, though, it seems like a spooky premonition. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's family was not only grieving in private, though. As the headlines started to fade and focus shifted to other topics, something else was developing that the world had not yet seen. They were getting ready for something that would soon rock followers to their foundations, a reaction, a message, a truth. However, we must first comprehend the extent of this suffering and what Warner himself went through in the days that followed before we can disclose what that message was and how it broke the quiet. Malcolm-Jamal Warner has always been extremely reserved for someone who was raised in front of the world. living in American living rooms as Theo Huxtable. Warner remained silent amid his personal problems, in contrast to many other Hollywood celebrities who resorted to the media. However, quiet has a lot to say. His energy drastically changed in the days after the catastrophe, according to close friends. He quietly pulled out of a promising partnership on a new television show, curtailed appearances, and canceled planned interviews. It appeared to the general public to be a straightforward schedule dispute. Behind the scenes, however, many who knew him well understood. It was sorrow. Warner, who was known for his serene, introspective disposition, was observed pacing his lawn late at night while whispering to himself. It was like watching a man try to bear the weight of the world on his shoulders without breaking, according to a neighbor who wished to remain nameless. Death wasn't the only thing at stake. It had to do with losing control and the refuge he had built over the years breaking down. In previous interviews, Malcolm had frequently discussed the value of his family, particularly after overcoming the challenging and occasionally harmful consequences of early celebrity. He acknowledged parenting with completely altering his perspective on life and referred to his wife as his anchor. Despite Warner's maturity and inner strength, he was unprepared for the degree of anguish that descended upon him because grief is a brutal teacher. Insiders claim that he stopped performing music, which had been his form of healing for many years. For weeks, his bass guitar, which was typically in his hands or resting close to the couch, remained unplayed. Friends became worried. He refused to eat. He refused to go to sleep. He was unwilling to speak. Perhaps the most painful story came from one of Warner's old industry pals, who recounted a late-night phone chat in which Warner finally opened up just once. One close source said, "It's like he went somewhere else entirely, like he disappeared into himself." They claimed that his voice was hardly distinguishable. He was only able to reply, "I failed them. I wasn't there when they needed me most." That sentence alone says a lot. It exposes the shame that many survivors have following an unanticipated disaster. Your mind will try to persuade you otherwise, even if it isn't your fault, particularly when you're the one everyone turns to for stability: the father, the spouse, the guardian. And something else was happening while Warner struggled with this emotional gloom, a silent power that appears in the most unlikely locations. His daughter, who was only in her teens, started writing Dad's small notes all around the house. "Dad, you have my undying affection. The strongest person I've ever met is you. We will be all right." Eventually, the notes that were left next to his unplayed instruments, pinned to mirrors and tucked behind doors, became his lifeline. Warner started to open up, not to the public just yet, but to his inner group, his faith, and most crucially, his grief after being moved by the tenacity of his kids and his wife's quiet but resolute support. However, what was happening behind those locked doors was still unknown to the outside world. That is, until the world was given access to the family's combined emotional message. Even those who believed they had heard everything were taken aback by what they stated. What was said in the statement? What mysteries did it uncover? Why did it make admirers cry all over the world? Remain with me, because the story's core is what happens next. When the Warner family first spoke, it was on a morning when everything seemed to stop. It had been about a week after the terrible news of the tragedy broke. In the hopes that it was a misunderstanding, or at the very least, that a member of the family would come out to explain the hurt everyone felt, fans, friends, and other celebrities had been waiting impatiently. Then the statement emerged out of nowhere. Publicists on all official media mirrored the post, which was shared via Malcolm-Jamal Warner's verified Instagram. The post included white text on a plain black background, with no images or music, just unadulterated, unedited emotion expressed through well-chosen words. And it said, "We are shattered." At the top, it cannot be expressed in any other way. The world stopped. Malcolm made a very intimate confession at the start of the speech. "Writing this has been the most difficult thing I have ever done. It has been more difficult than any role I have ever played or storm I have encountered in my life. Due to the fact that this is not acting, it's heartbreak." He went on to acknowledge the flood of love and support, saying that every message, bouquet of flowers, prayer, and candle lighted in their honor had reached their wounded hearts, even though he hadn't had the courage to speak out yet. Then the moment that devastated fans worldwide arrived. "He was more than my son. He brought me delight, my legacy, my mirror, and my little instructor. It's unbelievable that I won't get to hear his laugh ever again. It's unbelievable that I won't be able to see him develop into the amazing person I know he would have been." With their gentle delivery and terrible reality, those words struck like a thunderclap. There was more than simply paternal anguish in them. It was unspeakably human, poetic, and timeless. However, the statement continued. Warner continued by tactfully but firmly addressing the public's conjecture. Stop spreading rumors if you are. Our grief is already engulfing us. We request the room to grieve, reflect, and rebuild according to our own plans. For the sake of healing, not for publicity or drama. Fans who had witnessed tabloid headlines spreading like vultures, fabricating stories about accidents, mental health, family conflicts, and other topics, found resonance in that section. Warner didn't react angrily. It was respectful. It served as a reminder to everyone that humanity lies behind fame. Fathers, mothers, and kids only trying to get through their worst moments are behind the headlines. However, the statement's most talked about part was when Malcolm's late mother, who had died years ago, was quoted by the entire family as they concluded, "We might shatter, but we won't vanish." On social media, that quote went viral and spread like wildfire. It was transformed into artwork by fans, who even sewed it onto clothes and even got it permanently inked on their bodies. It represented both the strength to move on and the anguish of loss. Stars from the entertainment industry shared the remark, which received over 2 million likes and 800,000 comments in a matter of hours. Using the hashtag #StockAller We Will Not Disappear, Viola Davis, Oprah Winfrey, Denzel Washington, and even former co-stars Felicia Rashad and Tempest Bledsoe sent their respects. Additionally, a family friend provided a video clip that briefly featured Malcolm-Jamal Warner's face for the first time since the tragedy. He was silent. He had no smile on his face. He merely stood next to a picture of his kid with his hand over his heart, encircled by candles, a father in pieces, a man in mourning, a legacy broken. But there was strength even in that silence. Because the tragedy was no longer limited to the Warner family. It had grown into a national anguish and a shared mourning that would soon grow into something much more significant, a tribute to the public that would be historic. There was more to what transpired on that steamy Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles than a memorial. Millions of people's hearts were knitted together in a single, worldwide pulse of love, loss, and remembering. The burial service for Malcolm-Jamal Warner's kid, which took place at the famed Hollywood Forever Cemetery, turned into one of the most poignant public memorials in recent Hollywood history. The Warner family chose the location because it is symbolic a site where stars lay and legacies shine forever rather than because of the fame. Friends, family, supporters, and the entire world were welcome. Then the world appeared. Fans were already lining up along Santa Monica Boulevard hours before the gates opened. Many are praying with their hands clasped together or holding candles, flowers, or framed pictures. Others carried posters that said, "Gone too soon," while others sported Theo shirts in reference to Malcolm's most well-known role. "We weep with you, Malcolm, and maybe most poignantly, you taught us love through your loss." The gathering fell into mournful stillness as the tribute began, accompanied by a melancholy rendition of "Lean on Me," played by a string quartet. Former Cosby Show cast members were among the first to arrive. Malcolm's on-screen mother, Felicia Rashad, entered subtly, her eyes welling with tears. Her presence spoke louder than words could. Tempest Bledsoe Kesha Knight Pulliam, as well as a wheelchair-bound Bill Cosby, struggled to convey evident emotion through a pre-recorded speech. Then came Will Smith, Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson, Tyler Perry, and Oprah Winfrey. Everybody was there not for the cameras, but for the guy they knew and admired as a friend, parent, and peer. The audience stood in reverence rather than applaud as Malcolm-Jamal took the platform to speak. Malcolm, wearing a plain black suit with a button undone at the collar and no tie, paused for a long moment before continuing. The only sounds were the fluttering of tissue and the occasional whimper. "I didn't come here today to talk about death," he said. He talked about the day his son was born, how he used to hum Cosby Show lullabies, how his son loved dinosaurs and jazz, and how he recently began writing a comic book with him called Super Theo. "I came to talk about life, my son's life, the short, powerful, radiant life that shook me to my core." A sea of nods and silent sobs greeted each story, each pause, and each tear, and Oprah herself got up and went to grasp Malcolm's hand when he started to cry. Then the most memorable moment arrived. "You may be gone from our arms, but But you'll never be gone from our stories, Malcolm remarked, turning to face the enormous picture of his son that was displayed on the screen behind him. The words his kid had once penned in a journal at the age of 7 were displayed on the screen as it went to black and then softly re-emerged. "You are my reason, you are my strength, you are my star." The audience burst out. "When I grow up, I want to make the world smile." The strongest of them were no longer able to contain themselves. Media members, celebrities, strong women, and grown men all shed tears in solidarity, grief, and healing. A white dove ceremony started after the speaker. For every day his kid had lived on this planet, 44 doves were released into the sky. A gospel choir started singing, "Going Up Yonder," as the birds flew above the city, and the mood changed from one of sadness to one of spiritual encouragement. Thousands of people watched the memorial live on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. The hashtag Theo became the world's top trending hashtag within an hour. It was more than just a farewell at the memorial. A spiritual and cultural reckoning had place. Fans and families were compelled to stop, think, and value life, love, and legacy. "This wasn't just a loss for you, Malcolm," said Viola Davis, who gave Malcolm a hug following the funeral. The abrupt and tragic death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner's little kid sparked weeks of suspicion, but your bravery has reminded us how to go forward with honesty, vulnerability, and power. It was a tragedy for all of us. But there was a complicated and incredibly human narrative hidden beneath the widely shared stories, the suspicions, and the family's silence. One that would eventually torment those closest to him, full of silent struggles, warning flags, and wasted opportunities. The final 48 hours before the boy's death were both routine and disturbing, according to an individual close to the Warner family. He spent time with his grandmother and father at home. They had just returned from a nature trek over the weekend, which Malcolm claimed was a family tradition that always provided them with tranquility and quality time together. Nothing seemed physically amiss, although his son had been a little quieter than normal that day. Malcolm remembered telling a close friend he was a little more reserved. Malcolm left for a scheduled podcast interview downtown the morning of the incident, saying, "But kids have off days. I didn't think anything of it. I wish I had." He and his grandma stayed at home while his son drew in his notebook, ate cereal, and watched cartoons. He apparently complained of headache and vertigo at lunchtime and fell asleep. However, he was not responding when his grandma came to check on him 40 minutes later. There was panic. They dialed 911. Within 6 minutes, paramedics were on the scene. Efforts to resuscitate him started right once, but his heartbeat was weak and his respiration had already decreased. He was taken in a hurry to Beverly Hills Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The emergency call came in the middle of recording while Malcolm was still at his interview. By the time he got to the hospital, his son was critically ill, and witnesses said he dropped everything and fled the studio while shouting into his phone, "Tell me he's breathing. Tell me he's okay." For more than an hour, doctors labored non-stop. Acute hydrocephalus, a sudden accumulation of fluid in the brain, is an uncommon condition that is nearly impossible to foresee, especially in young infants. It may hit without much notice. The pressure builds quickly, and without immediate drainage or surgical relief, it can result in a fatal collapse of vital brain functions, said one unnamed medical expert. It was heartbreaking, unjust, and devastating. Malcolm was admitted to the intensive care unit. The last words his kid would hear were, "You're my hero. Daddy's here. You're not alone." He said these words while holding his little boy's hand. The boy died at 4:44 p.m., surrounded by grieving family members and hospital employees. The remorse that followed the disaster was what made it even more intolerable. Malcolm allegedly said to a confidant, "I should have seen it, but doctors insist there was nothing anyone could have done without prior symptoms. The illness can be lethal, even within hours, and resembles typical children ailments, such as mild headaches, lethargy, or moodiness. I should have known something was wrong. I should have stayed home." The Warner household fell into startled quiet in the days that followed. There were no news conferences or instant Instagram tributes, just sadness and desolation. Malcolm went 3 days without eating. He didn't get any sleep. He reportedly spent hours reading his son's paintings and reciting lullabies while sitting in his room. Then came the most brutal moment of truth. Malcolm found a sealed envelope with the words, "Open this when I'm not around." It included a hand-drawn comic strip called Me and Daddy Save the World. which he found while going through his son's possessions. The boy had a fantasy about it. Wearing superhero costumes, he and Malcolm are soaring through space, combating despair and spreading happiness. The son says, "If you're reading this, don't be sad." In the last panel, Malcolm was broken and healed by that letter, and a week later he finally posted a statement. "My son may be gone, but his light, oh, his light will burn in me forever. Every project I do from now on, every role, every word will be in his name. I'm still here, just invisible, but I'll always be your superhero."